welcome to this month's edition of The Breeze. Last month we had a good time talking about identity and how it was shaped, whether you are defined by your career, for example. I'll read you a little Kathleen Parker quote. Identity is essential to our sense of self, our relationship to others, and our place in society. That's a pretty heavy statement. And Tina, you said something last week, which actually I disagree with, and I wanted to bring it up again.
Oh, gee.
And that is, we were talking about whether career defines you individually or whether you have a different sense of self. And you said that it seems that being an attorney was important to you, which is just wrong, okay?
It wasn't important to you?
Not in terms of who I am.
Okay.
I mean, it's a job.
Okay.
Then you also said, I didn't know you were an attorney for several weeks.
Correct.
Which is a compliment, which I'm sure you didn't mean. But no, seriously, those statements seem to capsulize the way I feel about it, that you shouldn't be defined by your career. You should be seeking ways to be your own self without relying on that.
But aren't you responsible for the perception that I have initially? I mean, if you wanted me to know about your past and everything else, I'm sure you would tell me. You'd open your mouth and say, hey, I'm a former attorney, and if you need any information, don't ask me because I don't do it for free or whatever.
Well, that's what you would think. And that to me, that's not self-destructive, but it doesn't enhance your ability to find out who you really are and who you really want to be. Mm-hmm. What do you think, Marge?
Well, I think that when you hear you're an attorney, there's a stereotype that develops very quickly in a mind. You get pigeonholed. Oh, you got another attorney, or it's like you're on the other side for some reason. So I think we have to have opportunities to not identify ourselves so much as that. You know what? Somebody says, "What do you do?" There was a guy that came up with this. Well, I breathe often, and I start my day, and nothing is said about work life. His point was, we are so much more than that.
Yes, definitely.
And now being retired, that's like old identity now.
Well, you're assuming, though, when you say retired, that you're no longer working. So to me, when I respond, I'm semi-retired. Because I'm always going to be connected, whether it's volunteering, as we're doing here, or if it's actually being paid for what I do. Mm-hmm. I'm always going to be connected in that fashion. So in my mind, I'm always going to be semi-retired.
Well, inherent in identity is the universal need for respect, dignity, and maybe if it's not too much trouble, admiration. And maybe if you're just leaning too much on who you were, what you did, or what you do, then maybe you're not really appreciating the fact of who you are. There's an old philosopher named Yogi Berra who said, when you get to a fork in the road, take it. And the thing is, there are many forks in the road of everybody growing up.
Absolutely.
And we're going to talk a little bit about today is what seminal or transcendent event in your life, or maybe there were several, or a series of events, that has made you who you are today. Margie, you seem pretty clear on yours.
Yeah, I can pretty much pinpoint a change in my life. It wasn't marriage, it wasn't becoming a mother, it wasn't leaving home. It was later in my adult life, I'd say about 25 years ago. I had been divorced many years, and I made a decision that I would remain single and that I would not seek a relationship, I would not encourage a relationship. I had several experiences, stop and starts of relationships, and they would get to a certain point, and I would just say,
I'm done?
Feel, that's it, I'm done. But that's not what made the difference when suddenly I had to announce to somebody, you know what, this has been nice, but no more.
You sound like a heartbreaker.
Well, I made the decision that I was not going to be that after a very meaningful relationship ended quickly.
So that decision has basically formed and given you the path to where you are today.
It has.
Determined the path, I'll say that.
And with a great deal of relief, I felt I was being honest with myself and honest with other people. And then I began to really establish myself as a single person forever, looking at finances, looking at location, looking at my parent responsibilities. I mean, you have to kind of do a reevaluation sometimes. But that has defined me.
Okay.
I don't want to be seen as a divorced person. That's so ancient history for me.
When I got divorced, I never said that. I went straight to single.
Yeah, or
Because there's a
I'm
label
unmarried.
that people put on you when you hear divorced.
I know.
Well, Tina, was there a moment or a time in your life where you decided something that has determined basically who you are today?
Well, there were a couple of things. One was out of my control, and one was within my control. My mother remarried at my age 15, and I was forced to leave Chicago and move to LA. LA is, they call it La La Land for a reason. I hated it, did not like the whole, Christmas at 80 degrees at the beach. Coming from Chicago, that wasn't a lifestyle that I really embraced. However, after 6 months, I figured out I was only hurting myself. And I became more involved in school and doing things, and said that I've got to do better for myself.
So, if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying that even though you were forced into a situation, you made a proactive decision to change, and that sort of has evolved into how your lifestyle was determined and your life arc, if
Yes,
you will.
I'd say that's fair. It also, the element of risk. I mean, it was a risk for my mother to move us there, and it was a risk for me to live there as far as my activities and who I became. And that kind of positioned myself for other opportunities and being open to them. So when I had a chance to move from LA to DC, I took it. I moved in 3 weeks. And everybody looked at me like, what? Are you crazy? I knew one person in DC. I says, well, I'll figure it out.
I'll chip in here and say I can see very clearly that one of the biggest decisions that determined who I am today was when I was in high school considering colleges, and I fought for almost 2 years to get an appointment to the Air Force Academy, and I got it, and I turned it down. And there were various reasons, and one of which, this was 1965. But if I'd gone into the Air Force and maybe become a pilot, or maybe not, but anyway, that's a whole different direction. I would have been a lifer in the military as opposed to what really happened, which is civilian college with a major picked by my high school counselor. And then various other forks in the road arose where you make a decision and everything else would be different if you had done it the other way.
Absolutely.
And that's somewhat philosophical, but that really determines who you are and who you want to be. And I eventually went to law school at suggestion of somebody else and ended up in a career which was nice, but not who I am.
Who are
I don't
you?
think. Well, I'm a different person than you would think. The point I want to bring out is once you make those decisions, that puts you in a direction which is sometimes impossible to change. In my case, it was reactionary. I reacted to events. I will freely admit that I have not been proactive in determining my life. You, on the other hand, if you look at seminal moments in your life, you call them milestones, and you make decisions.
I try to. I'm the type of person that some people have to really investigate every blessed thing and they cannot make a decision, and that drives me crazy. I will take a limited amount of information and based on what I find, make a decision based on fact, and I use the left brain more than the emotion to make that decision. Moving down here was part of that because I lived in Northern Virginia. Traffic was getting terrible. I wanted to capture the equity in my home. So my husband came home one day and said, hey, honey, I'd like to retire in 3 years because this is second retirement. I says, where you want to go? Because you got to get out of here. He says, I don't know. So went on the internet, found Sun City Hilton Head, and I sent him an email. We share the same office, but you guys are very visual, and we have to send you stuff so you can read it. So I sent him an email, and I said, so what about Sun City Hilton Head? Because we had been down here before. And I said, well, if you could move in a year, would you? He said, hell yeah.
Well, that's kind of the way I got over here too. Now, Margie, are you proactive or reactive?
I seemed to become a little more adventurous as I got older. My first big trip was to Miami, leaving my parental home, married, going to Miami, and then I made several moves from there, and they've been all because I really wanted to. But they were prompted by my family moving. I have a daughter and a son-in-law and 2 grandkids, so I followed them from Florida to Texas to here.
Well, that's more reactive in that case.
Yeah, well, it is, but
You made the proactive decision to remain single,
yes.
and that shaped pretty much your personality and who you are.
Yes, correct.
And other decisions are kind of reactions to changing circumstances.
But to execute them, you have to really be proactive.
Ah,
You got to really take care of it.
Now, you're not the first I've heard that moved because of the kids, but my thought's always, well, the kids are not necessarily going to make their decisions on you. And if you're chasing the kids may decide to move to Alaska. Are you going to go there?
Well, I won't now because one's in college and the other's on her way to college in the fall. And I don't anticipate moving my daughter and son-in-law, moving wherever they might go in the future. No. I see this as it.
Okay.
But I can't say, I can't write that in ink and not sometimes have an occasion to go somewhere else.
So if we see a moving truck in front of the house, we know
We'll know.
she made a
I'll
decision.
let you know.
we went to ask some questions of our residents here, and the question was, excluding marriage and your decision to come to Sun City, what was the most significant single event that was a major factor in identifying you, who you are today? Let's look. Is there a particular event or decision that you made or didn't make that's determined who you are today?
Yes, I would say my decision to become a teacher it was very instrumental in my life. I've been an educator forever. I never wanted to do anything else. And I had a wonderful career as a teacher, guidance counselor, school psychologist, principal, college professor, etc. And been very happy with that decision.
At age 4, my grandfather, who was a old-time physician, always wore a suit with a vest and always carried a cigar in his mouth. He never smoked much. Smelled like medicine. And at age 4, I got his stethoscope. And I knew that's what I always wanted to be, and that's what I became, and that's been my life as medicine till about a year and a half ago when I finally retired.
And you know the question, why don't you tell us about it?
Well, I think the biggest thing that's been life-changing for me is when I moved to Sun City. And for the first time, I was doing something for myself instead of being the support system for other people. So the biggest thing that changed me was coming to the health club, getting a personal trainer, and learning how to exercise again. And I lost 100 pounds. So because of, the exercise, it's changed my life to be healthier.
Okay, those were some interesting answers. In my case, I came to several forks in the road. Graduated from college, should I go to grad school or not? That determined a whole different course of action. Mm-hmm. Got drafted. What do I do about that? What I decided to do determined the next 30 years of my life.
Sure.
Okay. Tina, you mentioned the other day that when you get to be 70 in about 10, 20 years,
Watch it.
when you get to 70, you're going to sit down and evaluate who you are and where you are in life and make some decisions about going forward.
More, it's about geography. I've always loved those little tiny houses. And I said, the next hurricane, I'm going to get in a tiny house and I'm out of here. But everyone says that I could not live in a tiny home. But they're so cute and I like the idea. But yeah, I want to kind of plan out from whenever that birthday comes to what I see myself doing and where I see myself. And I love it here, so I probably will be here in age and place.
Do you care about how other people might perceive that?
No,
Okay.
not at all.
I think a lot of people do care how they're perceived.
Well, they're not going to pay my bills. They're not going to come necessarily.
I'm not talking about that, but
no.
they're going to say, "There's that crazy woman in that tiny house. What's the matter?"
Oh, you
with
mean
her?"
the tiny house? Well, they're talking about doing communities. So,
No, I don't know that at
oh
all.
well, that's right. You're not on the internet. So, anyway, they're becoming more and more popular, and the thought of a tiny home is something I've considered, and I might not do that until 80. Because my mom is 89 and she's as sane as ever, and she's a fashionista, and they talk about the genes, and I got those genes, so if I'm fortunate, then maybe I can push that decision back to 80.
There's a lot to be said in achieving your own self-identity and finding out who you really are. And, being here, it sort of emphasizes that you have to find out who you are and what you're all about. And you have to sort of shed whatever identity you had before you got here, or else you're going to be stuck in neutral.
I don't know that you have to shed it. I think you can turn it into something really productive and good. I mean, when people hear I've been a social worker, well, I didn't peddle food baskets. Social work is different. I had to work my way up through the ranks. You can't be in the nonprofit for 45 years and not work your way. So, but I still have that need to sort of create and execute things and organize and do good. And there are those opportunities here in our own neighborhood. A few of us have stepped up. We have a charity arm to our neighborhood, for instance. Well, guess who raised their hand first? Because it's just...
But I think that's a part of who you are.
Yeah, I agree. I was going to say the same
maybe.
thing.
Not the job, but it's a part of who
It
you
may be,
were,
but-
and you've just embraced that through.
Yeah, through my work and now
Yes.
through volunteer opportunity.
Right.
We still should be always carry the best of what we know and can do with us, I think, into other arenas.
Absolutely.
I think frequently when we talk about what do you do, what we did, Doug, what you did in your career defines who you are in most person's mind. They have a stereotype of you.
And that's what I personally would like to avoid. I never talk about what I did. What I'd like to do is I'd like to see how you react in a situation. What kind of conversation can you carry on?
Mm-hmm.
Are you intelligent? Do you speak well?
But
Or
also, this is an opportunity to recreate yourself if you want to project a different image.
Right?
And, again, like I said, when I first met you, it was in this environment, and I wasn't prone to ask you, well, what did you do in your past life? Because it wasn't germane to what we're doing right now.
Was it important to you at all what experience I might have? I mean, you didn't ask for...
Yes, because I became to consider you a friend.
Right.
Had I not really done that, I probably would not have delved into what you were.
Well, I can...
Go
Go ahead.
it goes to that area of my circle of friends and people who I want to embrace.
See, and I would have been curious. That would have been one of my questions. What did you do in your other life? Maybe it's out of curiosity. Maybe it's being nosy. But the thing is that something I read that I'll share with you is that every conversation is building a relationship, even when you meet somebody for the first time. And when we say, what do you do or what did you do, it's kind of a shorthand way of getting a snapshot. And the challenge here from this writer is it's time to reframe those stereotypes and change the picture in your mind. So instead of somebody saying to me, what did you do? I could say, well, I feel like I was a help to a lot of people during my career because I was working in social services, rather than, oh, I was a...
Which is a label.
Put it more on what you contributed, make it a teachable moment. Did you know that today there are 500,000 children in foster care? And it's something that's related to you because it's informed and it also just doesn't put you in this little box.
Unfortunately, I agree with you, but because of time and limitations, if I went around the room to ask everyone or to get to know everyone in that regard, it would be disingenuous. And one of the things that I try to be is genuine with people. It's just like when you say, how are you doing today? Sometimes I don't really want to know. It's just a matter of a courtesy. Because if you're going to complain or whatever else, I don't want to hear that. I want to hear good things.
Well, some people are just waiting for the next thing to go wrong,
Yeah.
so they
yeah.
can carp
You know,
about it.
Yeah.
But I guess if you want to start a conversation in hopes of meaning more to somebody, or maybe developing a friendship, or just making them feel better, we really have to learn to take it to that extra. Oh, you look happy today, or what good do you think we can do today, or.
Well, one final question, you guys, might be who you are today at Sun City. Is it still the same person you were?
When you got here?
Yeah, I'm just doing different things or not doing most things.
For me, it's different because I was married when I got here and now I'm single. So it's definitely different.
Okay. Well, I'd like to think I'm the same too, but I'm sure that we've all recreated our own image in some respect once we've gotten here. And I think that people need to consider who they are, how they got where they are, what were the events that shaped your life. And I think our good friend Larry Kilkoff will have some thoughts on that. Larry?
This month's Breeze topic is one armchair philosophers should be able to sink their teeth into. What considerations go into making the kind of spiritual, practical, and philosophical choices that, together, comprise the very formula for a successful life? And what do you do when life itself throws a monkey wrench into your best laid plans? What is your plan B when the stream bed runs bone dry? Or what, pray tell, do you do a moment later when the dam breaks upstream and you are suddenly swept up in a torrential flash flood of churning adversity that threatens to drown you in an instant rather than drain the life force from you in an agonizingly slow death by deprivation? That's a pretty cheerful picture, eh? Particularly if your personal ambitions ran more on the modest side and you were basically just looking for a steady job to put food on the table, a roof overhead, and a warm bed to sleep in. Still, there is something about the admonishment about people who make things happen, people who watch what happens, and people who wonder what happened. Although one of the things I dearly wished I had made happen in my life was to knock the you-know-what out of the handful of life insurance salesmen who laid that line on me. I mean, come on, really. But let's go with a home improvement model of life planning for a moment. It has a lot going for it. Start with a basic functional design. Add additional space in complementary proportional measure, kind of like these folks did here. Yeah, that's the ticket. No reason at all why you can't apply that same principle to marriage, having kids, forging a career, and cruising comfortably into retirement despite whatever circumstantial curveballs are thrown your way, right? So, how did you do in creating your castle in the clouds? What did the finished product look like after all of your roads not taken? Here's mine. Yeah, I don't know. I thought I had all of life's dumb luck well planned, but I guess the secret is making sure that bad luck doesn't sabotage the most conservative, sober, and responsible behavior that would otherwise qualify you for sainthood. And frankly, I'm a bit suspicious of people who claim they know how to reliably do that. All I know is I'm pretty sure you can drive yourself out of your mind second-guessing decisions you wished you had made differently. And having made more than a few of them myself, they tend to diminish the congratulatory pats on the back I might be tempted to give myself for things that actually did turn out right. Was I really that smart? I'm not so sure. In fact, I'm Larry Kilkoff, and I don't know about you, but I think I'm just going to be eternally grateful for the fact that I soft landed here.
Thanks, Larry. Well said. And we'll be back next month to talk about a different topic. We've beat up identity pretty well. And do you have any final thoughts there, Tina?
I think that we need to share who we are and be more compassionate with people that we meet. And if we have the opportunity, find out a little bit more about who they are and how they've become who they are.
Marge?
I agree. That's my point.
Short and sweet, and I think that we've enjoyed this. We hope you give us some feedback on this conversation and others. And please join us again next month when we again shoot the breeze.